In 75 BC, a ship crossing the Aegean was taken by pirates. Cilicians, the best in the business. The young Roman they pulled off the deck was 25, on his way to Rhodes to study public speaking, and they set his ransom at 20 talents of silver. He laughed at them. He told them they had no idea who they'd caught, and that the figure should be 50. Then he sent his people off to raise it and settled in to wait. For the better part of 40 days, he behaved less like a prisoner than a guest who owned the boat, or so the story goes. It comes to us from Plutarch, writing generations later, and by one account it may even trace back to Caesar telling it about himself. In that version, he joined their games. He made the crew sit through his poems and speeches, and when they weren't impressed, he called them illiterate savages to their faces. When he wanted to sleep, he sent word for quiet, and he got it. And every few days, grinning, he promised he'd come back and crucify the lot of them. They thought it was hilarious. The money came, and they let him go. He sailed to Miletus, raised ships and men on nobody's authority but his own, and found them still at anchor. He kept the promise. He had their throats cut first, which, by Roman standards, counted as mercy. And the most famous sentence anyone ever put in his mouth is one he never said. Julius Caesar. He was born in July, 100 BC, in the Subura, a loud and crowded district down in the low ground of Rome. His family, the Julii, had one of the oldest names in the city. They claimed descent from the goddess Venus through Aeneas of Troy, which is the kind of ancestry nobody can argue with and nobody can spend. Because in practice, the Julii were, by the standards of the Roman aristocracy, broke. Patrician, ancient, respectable, and nowhere near the front rank. His father was a moderately successful politician who got as far as governing the province of Asia. His mother, Aurelia, came from the Aurelii Cottae, a sharper and far better connected family, and it was her side of the house that carried the useful contacts. Then, in 84 BC, his father died. No warning. Suetonius says only that he lost his father in the course of his 16th year. So the boy was 15 or 16, and what he had just inherited was a magnificent name, a modest amount of money, and a city that was 2 years away from killing people by list. The lists belonged to Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Sulla won the civil war, marched an army into Rome, made himself dictator, and started publishing the names of men who could now be killed by anybody at all, legally. Thousands of names went up. And the teenager had married into precisely the wrong family. His wife was Cornelia, daughter of Cinna, who'd been the right hand of Sulla's dead enemy Marius. So Sulla sent an instruction. Divorce her. He said no. Sit with that for a second. He was about 18, with no army, no office, and no money, and the most dangerous man alive had asked him for something small. He refused, lost his inheritance and the dowry, and hid in the countryside while men lived for him. What saved him was lobbying. Relatives with influence, and the Vestal virgins, kept at Sulla until he gave way. Suetonius, writing roughly 150 years afterwards, has Sulla warning them they were fools, because in this Caesar there is more than one Marius. Nobody alive can check a line like that. What's certain is that he lived, and that in 81 BC, on campaign in the east, he won the civic crown, the oak wreath. Rome gave a soldier who saved a citizen's life in battle. Roman politics was a ladder with a fixed order of rungs, and every rung cost money he didn't have. He climbed it anyway. In 69 BC, Cornelia died, having given him the only legitimate child he'd ever have, a daughter called Julia. He married again, to Pompeia, and divorced her in 61 after a religious scandal in his own house, saying, in Suetonius' version, that his family should be free from suspicion as well as from accusation. In 63 BC, he stood for Pontifex Maximus, the chief priesthood of the Roman state, against two men considerably older and grander, and won by borrowing and bribing on a scale that would have ruined him if he'd lost. Then in 60 BC, he did the thing that actually made him. Pompey the Great was Rome's most successful living general. Marcus Licinius Crassus was its richest man. They could barely share a room. He got both into a private understanding, with no legal standing at all, in which the three of them would settle in advance what Rome was going to do. Historians call it the First Triumvirate. As consul in 59, he paid it back, land for Pompey's veterans, tax relief for Crassus's investors, and he married Calpurnia, who'd still be his wife on the last morning of his life. Then he asked for Gaul. He got it, and he stayed 9 years. In 58 BC, he destroyed the migrating Helvetii at Bibracte, then turned and beat the German king Ariovistus and the Suebi in the Vosges. In 57, he broke the Belgic coalition on the river Sabis in an ambush that nearly finished him. In 56, he took apart the Veneti of Brittany, who fought at sea, by having his crews cut their rigging down with hooks on poles. In 55, and again in 54, he crossed the channel into Britain, which no Roman army had done. And in the winter of 54, a Gallic ambush under a chieftain called Ambiorix wiped out a full legion and 5 extra cohorts in a single day. All the way through it, he was writing. The commentaries on the Gallic War went back to Rome in installments, in clean, plain Latin, in the third person, describing what Caesar had done in the calm voice of a man reporting on somebody else. It is a genuinely great piece of prose. It is also the main surviving source for the war it describes, which is a problem, and we should be honest about the size of it. In 52 BC, the Gauls found a leader who could unite them, a young Arvernian noble called Vercingetorix. He beat the Romans at Gergovia, which hardly anyone managed, then let himself get trapped in the hill fort at Alesia. What the Romans did there is one of the strangest engineering jobs in ancient warfare. In roughly a month, they built about 25 miles of fortification in 2 rings, one facing inwards to hold Vercingetorix in, one facing outwards against the relief army coming to save him, and then fought both at once. Alesia surrendered. Vercingetorix rode out and laid down his arms. Now, the numbers. Plutarch and Appian, both writing long afterwards, put it at something like 1 million Gauls killed and another 1 million enslaved. Caesar's own book claims 430,000 Germani killed in one episode, alongside almost no Roman losses at all. Modern historians treat the commentaries as propaganda prone to exaggeration, and they point out the obvious thing, that the main account was written by the man whose career depended on the war sounding enormous. The honest verdict comes to this. The real toll is unknowable now, and the campaign was brutal by any standard anyone has ever applied to it. The arrangement that had carried him fell apart, and the Senate wanted him back in Rome without his army, which meant standing trial with nothing to hide behind. On the 7th of January, 49 BC, the Senate passed its emergency decree, the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the instrument Rome reached for when ordinary law had run out. 3 days later, he was standing at a small river in northern Italy called the Rubicon. It wasn't a barrier. It was a line on a map, the southern boundary of his province, and the rule was simple. A governor who crossed it at the head of his legions was making war on Rome. He crossed on the 10th of January with 1 legion, the 13th. And here's the second most famous thing he's supposed to have said. Suetonius gives it in Latin, the die is cast. Plutarch says he shouted it in Greek, quoting the playwright Menander, and Plutarch's version isn't a statement at all, it's an instruction, closer to let the die be thrown. The 2 closest ancient sources can't agree on the language, let alone the words. From that morning, there was no version of the next few years where he went home and retired quietly. Pompey didn't try to hold Italy. He pulled the government and much of the Senate out of the country and rebuilt his forces in Greece, which was a serious plan and came close to working. On the 9th of August, 48 BC, the 2 armies met at Pharsalus, and the larger one, Pompey's, broke. Pompey got clear of the field and sailed for Egypt, where a boy king, Ptolemy XIII, was in the middle of a civil war of his own against his sister. Egypt had already worked out which way the Roman war was going to end. Pompey was murdered on the orders of officials of that court, who had reasoned that there was going to be exactly one winner in Rome, and that handing him the loser was the cheapest favor anyone had ever done him. Caesar arrived days too late for it to be either useful or deniable. And instead of a quick settlement, he found himself in Alexandria, standing in the middle of somebody else's dynastic war with a force far too small for the city he was standing in. Which is how the most consequential meeting of his life happened, almost by accident. Cleopatra was 21 and losing. Her brother and co-ruler had driven her out of Alexandria, and his people held the palace and the harbor. She needed to reach the Roman first, before her brother's court could shape his opinion for her, and she couldn't just walk in the front. So she came in covertly, at night, brought through the lines by a servant called Apollodorus. That part holds up. The famous part doesn't. Plutarch, writing generations later, says she was rolled up inside a carpet, or more exactly a bed sack, and carried in over Apollodorus's shoulder. He doesn't say where he got it, no earlier source has it, and most historians treat the carpet as a very good story wrapped around a real piece of smuggling. What isn't disputed is what came out of that room. He backed her claim against her brothers, fought a hard little war in the streets of Alexandria to make it stick, and she came out of it ruling Egypt. She later had a son she said was his, and called him Caesarion, Little Caesar. He never acknowledged the boy as his heir under Roman law. He'd already decided who that was, and almost nobody in Rome had any idea. There's a word for the policy he ran after Pharsalus, and the Romans turned it into a virtue. Clementia. Mercy. Sulla had taught the Republic exactly how you finish a civil war. Post the lists, kill the losers. This one did the opposite, on purpose and in public. Men who had taken up arms against him wrote, asking to be pardoned, were pardoned, and got their careers handed back on top of it. Two of those names matter more than all the rest. Marcus Junius Brutus had fought for Pompey at Pharsalus. He wrote afterwards asking for a pardon, got one, and was promoted. Gaius Cassius Longinus, who'd also served against him, was pardoned, given a military command, and promised a consulship. And in 44 BC, the Senate voted to build a temple to Clementia, almost certainly because he wanted one built, so the virtue would have a building with his name on it. None of that is legend, and none of it is irony. A later writer tidied into the story afterwards. It's what the record says. He made a career out of forgiving the men who tried to destroy him, and it worked every single time but one. He took the dictatorship over and over from 49 BC on, which was legal, if steadily harder to explain. In 46, the Senate handed it to him for a 10-year stretch. In February 44 BC, he took it for life. Dictator perpetuo. The teenager who'd hidden in the countryside because a dictator wanted something small from him now held that same office permanently, with his own face on the coins. And he used it hard. He wrote off about a quarter of what ordinary Romans owed and tightened the rules on credit. He extended citizenship to communities in Spain and in what's now northern Italy. He cut the free grain dole and settled his veterans in new colonies overseas instead. He greatly enlarged the Senate, packing it with provincials, including, to the open horror of the men already sitting in it, Gauls. And in 46 BC he threw out the Roman calendar completely. The old one was lunisolar, permanently drifting, and quietly manipulated by priests for political reasons. He replaced it with a solar year of 365¼ days. To drag the seasons back into line, 46 BC had to run 445 days. The Romans called it the Year of Confusion. The new calendar started on the 1st of January, 45 BC. He had about 14 months left. He was in his mid-50s by then, and he wasn't well. Suetonius and Plutarch both describe episodes. A collapse at Corduba in Spain. And at the Battle of Thapsus in 46 BC, he had to be taken off the field when what one of them calls his usual sickness came on him. Romans call it the falling sickness, roughly their term for epilepsy, and for a very long time that was the settled answer. Modern medical historians aren't so sure. One line of argument reads the late symptoms, the dizziness, the headaches, the falls, all bunched into the last few years as a run of small strokes rather than lifelong epilepsy. We're trying to diagnose a man from two biographies written more than a century after he died, so the case stays open, and anybody who tells you it's closed is selling something. What nobody argues about is the effect. In his last year, the most powerful man in the Roman world was visibly failing, and everybody standing near him could see it. On the 15th of March, 44 BC, the Senate met in the Curia of Pompey, a hall attached to the great theatre complex on the Campus Martius. They were meeting there because the usual Senate house was a building site, which meant the man who'd beaten Pompey walked into a room dominated by a statue of Pompey. He'd been warned, or so later writers tell it. A seer called Spurina had supposedly told him his life would be in danger no later than the Ides of March, and when he passed Spurina that morning and joked that the Ides had come, the answer was that they hadn't gone. His wife, the story goes, had begged him to stay home after a nightmare in which he died, and he nearly did, until one of the conspirators, a man he trusted completely, talked him into going. Around 60 senators were in on it. We know roughly 20 of their names. Two of the men waiting with knives were Brutus and Cassius, both pardoned by him personally. When it started, everyone else in the hall ran. He was stabbed 23 times. A physician named Antistius examined the body afterwards, in the first post-mortem recorded anywhere in history, and found that only one wound, the second, near the ribs, had actually been fatal. He'd bled to death. His body lay where it fell before slaves carried him home on a litter. And Rome didn't celebrate. The killers came out expecting a grateful city and found the doors shut and nobody in the street. So, et tu, brute. The most famous last words in history, and he never said them. That line comes from a play, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, first performed in 1599, more than 1600 years after the man in it died. What the ancient sources actually say is a mess, and the mess is better than the quotation. Suetonius and Cassius Dio both state flatly that he said nothing at all. Suetonius then adds that some people reported he said something in Greek, kai su teknon, meaning you too, child, and he passes it on as a rumor going round, not as something he'd stand behind. Plutarch has no last words either. In his version, when he saw Brutus among the men with knives, he pulled his toga up over his head and stopped resisting. 3 sources, 3 endings, no way to choose between them. And underneath all of it sits the fact that ought to make everybody more careful here. Not one eyewitness account of the murder survives. Every version we've got was written by men born a century or more after that hall emptied, working from other men's books. We know he was killed. We know almost nothing about the last minute of it. The will was read 4 days later, on the 19th of March, at Mark Antony's house, and it did more damage than the assassination had. The principal heir was an 18-year-old great-nephew. Almost nobody in Rome had thought about, Gaius Octavius, adopted in the document as a son and required to take the family name. Every Roman citizen was left a cash gift, widely reported as 300 sesterces each, and the private gardens along the Tiber were left to the public. Named among the secondary heirs was Decimus Brutus, one of the men who'd just helped kill him. The next day, the 20th of March, they burned him. Antony gave the funeral oration and did 2 things with it. He held up the torn and bloodied toga, and he read the terms of the will out to the crowd. That was the end of the conspirators' plan. The crowd went from grief to fury in the open air, cremated the body in the forum itself rather than carrying it out to the proper ground, and went looking for the houses of the men who'd done it. Brutus and Cassius got out of the city. Whatever they thought they were rescuing, this wasn't it. In July of 44 BC, the young heir put on games in the dead man's honor, and for 7 days running, there was a comet visible over the city. Suetonius says, it rose around the 11th hour and shone 7 days in a row. Ordinary Romans read it as exactly what it looked like. A soul going up to join the gods. The teenager understood at once what he'd been handed, and he pushed it for everything it was worth. He had a star put on the statue and onto the coinage, and started styling himself Divi Filius, son of the deified one, which is a formidable thing to have stamped on your money at 18. In 42 BC, the Senate made it official and declared him Divus Iulius. He was the first Roman citizen the state ever turned into a god, and that vote became the precedent every emperor afterwards used for his own cult. One footnote worth carrying, though. Some modern astronomers, Brian Marsden among them, have argued there may not have been a comet at all, and that what we're looking at is a political story that grew a sky to go with it. There's no settling that now, and it's worth knowing it isn't settled. And then there's the calendar. The one he decreed in 46 BC started running on the 1st of January 45 BC, and it ran Europe for more than 1600 years until Pope Gregory XIII corrected it in 1582. Corrected, not replaced. The 12 months, the lengths, the leap day every 4th year, all of it is his reform, still sitting underneath the calendar on the wall behind you, off by a fraction of a day that took 15 centuries to become a problem worth fixing. He was born in the month the Romans called Quintilis, the 5th. In 44 BC, they renamed it after him. Julius. July. Which gives the whole thing a shape you couldn't get away with in fiction. The Ides of March is a date inside a system he ordered built, and he was murdered on it in the 2nd year that system was running. He got 14 months as dictator for life. He got 1 complete year of his own calendar, and a month with his name on it that comes round every summer in a year that still counted his way. Here's the thing I keep coming back to with him. The lines everybody can quote are the ones nobody can source, and the things nobody quotes are the ones that are actually documented. Not the last words. The 25-year-old on a pirate deck, making a joke about crucifixion and then going back to keep it. The man who beat his enemies and then employed them, because he genuinely thought mercy was a better instrument than fear. Right up until the afternoon, it wasn't. The one who looked at the calendar, decided it was simply wrong, and replaced it with something that worked for 16 centuries. That's a person. He's considerably more interesting than the quotation. So, the comments. 3 famous moments. The die is cast at the river. Cleopatra in the carpet. Et 2. Brute in the Senate House. Which of those three did you think was solid history until about 10 minutes ago? Be honest, because I'd believe one of them my entire life. And if the version where the famous part turns out to be the invented part is your kind of thing, you already know where the rest of these live.